Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we'll talk about the astrology of July 2022. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to get this content early, and in some cases just exclusively, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Griffin. At the highest tier of my Patreon, you also get access to my monthly ebook, Magically Elections, which tells you the best times and methods for making planetary and other celestial talismans. So July is a highly combustible month, both socially and in terms of weather. With Mercury, Jupiter, and later the Sun all in fire signs, this is prime fire and explosion weather. At least Mars won't be in a fire sign as well, although he will square those Leo planets from Taurus. Now, Mars will have moved out of Aries into Taurus in July, so he goes from the sign of his domicile, where he's very strong, into the sign of his detriment, where he's very weak. And I've noticed that he acts badly when this happens because Mars is a very proud planet, and he views this loss of dignity as a humiliation. And so he will act out, often violently. Speaking of Mars, he will conjoin the planet Uranus in early August for a fiery and violent combination. And as the two planets start to get closer around July 20th, the risk of explosions, literal and figurative, will start to go up. Toward the month's end, toward the end of July, Mars will also apply to a square of Saturn, which will create an intense and volatile atmosphere around this time that is going to result in power plays and showdowns with authority. This is a dramatic change from June, just as a quick recap, which was a much quieter month astrologically speaking. Most of the major planetary aspects we saw involved the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, and we saw that the activity at the time was strongly focused on the judiciary, Mercury, and women in the news, Venus, both as individuals who are in the circles of power and are impacting current events, but also women and women's rights collectively. Now let's take July's astrology week by week. In the first week of July, July 1st in fact, Mars will square Pluto at 27 Aries Capricorn. This is a violent power play. There's an intense or powerful development of the cycle that began March 3rd of this year. Very likely this will have something to do with the Ukraine-Russia war, which began about a week prior to this new cycle, this Mars-Pluto conjunction starting. So I suspect we're going to see some especially violent or disturbing episode in this unfortunate war. Now, July 4th, we have a couple important events. Mars will enter Taurus. As I explained earlier, he's moving from the sign of his domicile, Aries, into the sign of his detriment, Taurus. So he's losing a lot of dignity. It's not a happy experience for Mars, who often does act out when this particular transition occurs. The last time this exact transit, this change of sign happened, was January 6th, 2021, which is when Mars went from Aries into Taurus. So it's possible there is a violent incident or terrorist attack that happens around July 4th intended to inspire fear. A few hours before Mars changes signs, he actually will have opposed the moon in this year's Aries ingress. So it's possible there is going to be some kind of violent moment that targets the public at large, which is represented by the moon, or women, since women, of course, are particularly connected to the moon. The same day, July 4th, Mercury will enter Cancer. Mercury loses a lot of dignity by leaving its diurnal domicile and entering one of the mute signs, which is another word for the water signs. Someone may stop talking now, because Mercury goes from Gemini to Cancer. For better or for worse, someone may lose their soapbox. July 9th, Mercury will have his morning set into the sun's rays at 9 degrees Cancer. Mercury enters the sun's rays now as he moves very fast to catch up with the sun, and this is generally an affliction for Mercury and any planet. So the last few days will have had a theme of someone having said a lot and now going silent. Well, with Mercury going into the sun's rays, this silence is really emphasized. We could be seeing negotiations or discussions that are going on in the background that basically go behind the scenes around July 9th and may be made public only much later. In week 2, starting with July 12th, Venus will trine Saturn, who is retrograde, at 24 Gemini and Aquarius, respectively. Some kind of right could be granted to women at this time because they are represented by Venus, although it's nothing especially momentous because Saturn is retrograde. Saturn can represent authority, especially authority held by an older person who is very entrenched in the existing power structure, who can provide some support to Venusian people and issues, due to Saturn's strong position in his own sign and the harmonious aspect to Venus. However, Saturn seems to have less influence or even willingness to act, as shown by his retrograde motion. The next day, July 13th, we will have a full moon at 21 degrees Capricorn. This full moon is ruled by Saturn. Because the moon is in Capricorn, a Saturn sign, Saturn has good qualities. He is in his own domicile, Aquarius, but again, he is retrograde. So his ability or willingness to act right now are limited. He trines Venus still in this full moon, but the next couple of weeks are going to be kind of full of this desire to help, because Saturn is acting positively when he's in his own sign in many ways, but he's not moving in the right direction. For that, I think we'll have to wait until he turns direct in October. So the next couple of weeks could be full of good intentions, but without a lot to show for it. July 16th, Mercury will conjoin the Sun at 24 degrees Cancer. This is the so-called superior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, which happens when Mercury is direct. This is a moment in which Mercury is cleansed and purged to start a new cycle. He's sort of being cleansed and recharged at the same time. It's a particularly quiet conjunction, as it happens in the mute or voiceless sign of Cancer. This aspect is going to be about secrecy and discussions that are happening very discreetly or behind the scenes. The next day, July 17th, Venus will enter Cancer. Venus is happy in Cancer, although she doesn't have major dignity here. It's only because the cold and moist nature of Cancer, a water sign, aligns with Venus's own cold and moisture inherent to her as a planet. In general, this is going to contribute to a more emotional, more nurturing side of Venus. We also could see women playing a prominent part who are taking on a particularly maternal role or getting involved in issues that impact mothers particularly. The third week of July, starting with July 18th, Mercury will oppose Pluto at 27 degrees Cancer in Capricorn. This and the Sun opposition to Pluto on July 19th go together. Now is a time for intense power plays and negotiations that are happening in the background. And it appears that because of this opposition, some kind of breaking point has been reached. It seems like the Sun and Mercury are in discussions trying to reach some kind of agreement, either with each other or with a third party. But there is a power player represented by Pluto who is opposing the discussions and is simply not having it. July 19th as well, Mercury enters Leo, and this is an important transit this year. Mercury will have passed through Cancer. This was a very quiet, demure, discreet passage of Mercury. He doesn't get to be as verbal as he usually likes. But now, when he enters Leo, it's time to take the truth out into the light of day, and that will happen on or around July 24th as Mercury passes out of the Sun's beams while still being in Leo. Don't forget that Leo is one of the so-called feral signs, which means that it is a very wild sign. It's a sign that is not afraid to be rude and crude and unnecessary. And so Mercury takes on some of those characteristics. He starts acting a little bit like a wild animal rather than a person. July 23rd, Mercury will trine Jupiter at 8 Leo and 8 Aries. Mercury gets an assist from Jupiter here, and something grand or showy will happen with a high degree of publicity. This may involve a politician, a highly placed office holder, or other power broker. There could also be a religious person involved because that is one of the significations of Jupiter. July 24th, Venus will square Jupiter at 8 degrees Cancer and Aries. There could be an announcement involving a woman or women, now again in a judicial context because Jupiter is involved. Venus in Cancer is received into Jupiter's exaltation, so this is someone with close ties to Jupiter who gets a great deal of public attention, generally positive, but there is still some tension and difficulty because of the nature of the square. The same day, July 24th, Mercury will have his evening rise at 10 degrees Leo. So Mercury will exit the sun's beams, and he is going to be now seen as an occidental planet that rises behind the sun. And so there could be some kind of somewhat splashy announcement now. It's not as splashy as it would like to be because Mercury is occidental, but Mercury does to some extent burst out of the cosmic cake and something is illuminated somewhat dramatically. We may get more information on those Plutonian negotiations and their breakdown of the past few weeks. Week 4 in July is extremely active and very volatile. It starts out with July 26th, when Mercury squares Mars at 14 degrees Leo and Taurus. Whatever last week's reveal or announcement may have been, now becomes highly contentious as Mercury squares Mars. There may be a lot of arguing, protesting, and general unhappiness about whatever Mercury recently revealed. Uranus is also implicated here because Mars approaches Uranus, so there's an extra element of volatility and unpredictability in the mix as well. July 28th, Jupiter will turn retrograde at 8 degrees Aries. He will have actually stationed retrograde a few days prior. It's a multi-day experience for these slower planets when they are turning retrograde and direct. So Jupiter is definitely on the back foot now, and he's going to be less than fully functional for the next 4 months. If we had assumed that matters would go forward a certain way, especially matters involving mercy, justice, the judicial system, fairness, there's a lot of filling in of details and a lot of revisions that need to happen for the next 4 months while Jupiter is retrograde. The same day, July 28th, we have a couple of other events. One is Mercury squaring Uranus at 18 Leo and Taurus. Combined with Jupiter going retrograde, Mercury is very militant and demands change. This is a highly charged combination that will be with us the last part of July and into early August, as that Mars-Uranus conjunction in early August perfects. July 28th, we have a new moon at 5 Leo, and it's going to be effective for the next 2 weeks. The new moon is ruled by the Sun, the ruler of Leo, and this new moon is most impacted by Jupiter, who trines the lunation from Aries. There is an important political cycle starting now, something that impacts people at the highest echelons of society, or really any group you're looking at, a corporation, any type of group. The new moon's influence only lasts 2 weeks, but this actually starts a 4-month cycle because of Jupiter's retrograde motion, where Jupiterian people, the wealthy, people connected with justice, religious people, have to revise their projects and justify their existence. On July 30th, Mercury will oppose Saturn at 22 degrees Leo and Aquarius. Mercury is not playing nice now and even challenges Saturn, in many ways the most powerful planet. This represents the most long-term entrenched powers in a group or society, and it represents someone making their voice heard in the face of overwhelming odds and power. Mars will square this opposition from Taurus, creating a very volatile, violent combination. This could be especially bad for wildfires. It's very easy for very hot, very combustible weather to exist now, not just in our emotions and in our hearts, but out there in the atmosphere. To sum it up, July is going to be an important month with a great deal of heat and volatility. Problems that were previously kept hidden and were trying to be addressed with background discussions are now emerging into full visibility with a great deal of drama and even violence. If you haven't seen my whole year 2022 forecast video to get the larger picture, check it out. You can also view my Aries ingress video for 2022 and early 2023. You can subscribe to the Nina Griffin channel on YouTube to get notified whenever videos are made public. Thanks for watching.